Welcome to another edition of Life, Love, and Philosophy. My special guest today is a Buddhist scholar and an author. He is also a computer consultant by profession, and he is also the producer of a weekly television program on CTV called Buddha Dharma. Again, my special guest is Percy Nanayakkara. Percy, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I became interested in Buddhism many years ago when I discovered in reading some introductory books on it that it helped me to better understand myself and the world. I was also fascinated to discover in reading certain philosophers such as Schopenhauer and Nietzsche that they found Buddhism to be very valuable. What I'd like to do today with Percy's assistance is to zero in on some passages of the Dhammapada, a very famous book. I guess could refer to it as a holy book, a Buddhist holy book.
Yes, it's a part of the scriptures.
Scriptures,
yes.
Yeah. What I want to do is to zero in on this famous Buddhist book, on certain passages in particular, because I think the audience will find them thought-provoking, and then I would like you to comment on some of them.
Yes.
First of all, the Dhammapada is a rather short book. I should point that out. Pretty easy to read relative to other scriptures of other religions. And before I go to a particular passage and certain introductory questions, which I want to ask Percy, I just want to mention some of the titles, again, in this book, the Dhammapada, because some of the chapter titles themselves are pretty interesting. Mind is one of the chapter titles. The fool, the wise man, the world, the man who is awake, joy, anger, desire. Percy, I think the most natural question to begin with is, what is the Dhammapada? How would you explain to someone who is totally unfamiliar with the book what it is?
Yeah. The teachings of the Buddha, which are written down, the scriptures, is called the Pali Canon, which is divided into 3 sections. And in Pali, you call it Tipitaka, the 3 baskets, which means one is discipline. The second is the doctrine, which is Dharma, or Dhamma. And third is the philosophy of Buddhism.
What does the word Dhammapada mean?
It has certain meanings are very intrinsic to that particular language, so that translation becomes a little difficult.
It was originally written in Sanskrit, is that correct?
No, it was originally written in Pali.
And Pali, Pali no longer exists as a language, am I correct?
No, Pali is like Latin.
Yeah.
It's not used, it's a dead language. But it is very much akin to Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Very much akin to Sanskrit, but there is difference. Now, Sanskrit was widespread, used in whole of India and other countries.
Yeah.
But Pali was spoken only in the northeastern region, where Buddha lived and Buddha traveled.
So the Dhammapada was originally written in Pali, if I understand you correctly?
Yes.
And then translated into Sanskrit?
Yes.
And eventually into many other languages?
It had been translated into many languages. Okay, how it originated was this, that at the time the Buddha preached these doctrines, there were no books available. There was no question of book publishing.
This was approximately 500 years before Jesus?
Yes. Or about 550 years before Christ.
Yes.
So what they did was, the learned monks, they used to rehearse it. So it was an oral tradition. They used to rehearse everything that was said.
Yes.
The Buddha had his cousin, who was also one of his disciples, who used to follow Buddha everywhere he went. Now that is why you find in the doctrines, in every doctrine, it starts with, "Thus have I heard."
Yes.
Because this is his assistant.
I find this very interesting, if I can interrupt for a moment, because in some ways, what you're saying is similar to the New Testament. that biblical scholars tell us that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John probably never met Jesus. And so much of what they wrote was part of an oral tradition.
Yes.
People said things about Jesus, stories about miracles that he performed, other things that he said, and that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John later reported this. Are you telling us that the Dhammapada was put together by disciples of the Buddha as a result of an oral tradition?
Yes, oral tradition, they practice it. But there was something like this. Immediately after the passing away of the Buddha, they had what is called the Buddhist Council, where all learned monks got together. They went through all the doctrines because they wanted to see that there is no misunderstanding about certain things. Then later, 100 years after the passing away of the Buddha, they had the second Buddhist Council. Then the third one, about 300 years during the time of King Asoka, with his patronage, Emperor Asoka, the great Indian emperor, with his patronage, they had the third Buddhist Council. And then there, that everything which is now found was finalized.
So just as if I can draw the analogy again to the Catholic Church, it had several important councils over the years
Yes.
to clarify doctrine and what Jesus might have said.
Yes.
The Buddhists have done the same thing.
The same thing. Because it is like this. Now, it was the oral tradition because there was no book publishing. But Phil, now, since there were no books, the capacity to remember, memory, was at a very high level of development.
Yeah.
Now, just as we know that, now, for instance, a blind person, his other sense organs are highly developed to compensate for what he does not have.
Sure.
So, in the same way, because there was no book publishing, the oral tradition was the strongest, and they used to remember everything.
Yeah.
Everything in minute detail they used to remember.
Whereas now in our very technological society today, there is not as much of a need to remember things.
Yes. Now, just as before the calculators became so popular and commonplace, that kids, they could do the calculations, they do the math. But now that ability is not
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yes, because they can, and now same thing happens to composition. Before the objective testing came, where every test was essay type, you had to have the ability to compose, to write.
Yes.
With the objective testing, that ability has gone down.
Yeah.
So, like that. So these were through oral tradition, rehearsing periodically, it went on.
One of the things I discovered in doing a little research on the book is that the word Dhammapada can be translated in several different ways. One of the translations I came across, and by the way, for viewers who don't know how to spell the word, who've never seen it, Dhammapada is spelled capital D-H-A-M-M-A-P-A-D-A. It's one word, Dhammapada. My understanding is one of the translations is the path to justice.
Yes.
Would that be acceptable?
Yeah. Yes. Path to normalcy.
Path to normalcy also?
Path to normalcy. Or also, it can mean the steps towards normalcy.
Could we also loosely translate it as the steps to wisdom?
Quite so. Yes. Yes.
There's some confusion, I think, among many people who are not familiar with Buddhism about whether Buddha was God. I often quote Buddha on this program, as I do Jesus, as I do some famous rabbis and also famous Hindu personages. Try to quote people from different religions. Was Buddha God? Or a God?
No, Buddha was not a God. Buddha is perhaps the only religious leader who did not claim divinity.
Yeah.
He did not say that he is God or son of God or a chosen person to whom a message has been revealed.
Yeah.
He said he is a human being. Through his own efforts, he achieved this. Now, there was a British philosopher who actually later came to the US and settled down in US called Aldous Huxley, one of the famous Huxley brothers.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, one of his brothers was a biologist who was a strong supporter of Darwin's theory of evolution. So this Aldous Huxley philosopher, he describes Buddhism this way. He says, Buddhism is a religion that knows no God in the Western sense.
Yeah, in fact, I've seen Buddhism described as an atheistic religion.
Yeah, of course, because you don't believe in, because the word atheist has a different connotation also. So this Aldous Huxley says, Buddhism is a religion that knows no God in the Western sense.
In the Western sense, I
In
like
the
that.
Western sense,
Yes.
which denies any efficacy to prayer and sacrifice,
Right.
which bids men to look for themselves for their own salvation.
Yeah. The best description of Buddhism I think I've ever read, I came across in Nietzsche, the famous German philosopher. Nietzsche liked Buddhism a lot. Nietzsche was an atheist, by the way, but he was a spiritual person, I believe. And he described Buddhism as a system of mental hygiene. He said, Buddhism, to me, is not really a religion. It's a system of mental hygiene.
Yes. Yes.
What I want to do now is to go directly to the book.
Yeah.
Let me just hold up the book here. This is my copy of it. My copy is unabridged. It runs to about 113 pages. It is interesting that the Dhammapada is so short.
Yes.
One of the reasons I think it's valuable is that in a very short space, one can have one's thoughts provoked about what might constitute wisdom. Let me go to the first chapter of the book. It's entitled Choices. And I just want to read a short passage and then have Percy comment on it. In fact, these are the opening words of this very famous Buddhist book, again, entitled The Dhammapada. We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world. I realize it's pretty much self-explanatory, but could you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
What is that passage telling us?
This as you mentioned, this is the opening verse in the Buddha Dharma, in the Dhammapada. Dhammapada consists of 423 verses uttered by the Buddha on some 300 odd occasions. The first one, this is a very basic one. Here what the Buddha says is that the world as it appears is what you think of it. And he continues to say, if you do something evil or with evil mind, then he says, it follows you, the effect of that follows you like the wheel follows the hoof of the oxen.
Yeah.
Okay.
What the Buddhists are saying here, correct me if I'm wrong, even though some would look upon it as an atheistic religion, the Buddhists believe there is order in the universe.
Yes.
And if we do evil, we're going to be punished for it.
Yeah.
If we do good, we're going to be rewarded for
Yeah.
it.
If you would read the second verse in that.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Again, this next verse follows very closely after the one I just read. Speak or act with an impure mind, and trouble will follow you. Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness will follow you.
Yeah, Phil, actually, this is basically what is called karma.
We say K-A-R-M-A. In English, we say it.
Yeah,
Karma.
of course, the word karma, it's in the English dictionary, so it is, but it is very often used in a very loose sense. Now, for instance, Yankees don't go to World Series, they would say, what to do, that's their karma. But actually, that is not karma.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that may be an effect of karma or other circumstances. Buddha defined karma. In his language, in Pali, he said, Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. O bhikkhus, I declare karma as volition. This is very important, that there has to be a thinking. there has to be a volition. There has to be a predetermination for any act.
So if I don't intend to hurt somebody, but I do hurt somebody, I will not accumulate bad karma. Bad things will
Phil.
not happen to me because I didn't intend to hurt
Phil,
somebody.
this forms the basis of universal jurisprudence, whether it's Roman Dutch law or Judeo-Christian law, the mental factor. In Latin, they call it mens rea.
Yeah.
That is guilty mind. And a guilty act does not become guilty unless the mind is guilty.
Now, the Buddhists believe, again, in this system of reward and punishment. I know the Buddhists believe in reincarnation. They believe we all die and are reborn. We all die many times and are reborn many times, and that the way we have behaved in our previous life will at least determine, in part, our next life, how we come back in our next life. But is it fair to say the Buddhists believe that we will be punished or rewarded for our actions, depending on whether they are good or evil, not just in the next life, but also in this life? Do Buddhists believe that we will be punished or rewarded in this life for any good or evil we do?
Yes, yeah. Actually, this is what, the doctrine of karma is not a doctrine of punishment and reward. It is like gravity, the law of gravity. You throw something up, it falls down. I mean, there's no question. Whoever does it, if you throw it up, it comes down.
Yeah.
In the same way, if you do something good, then happiness will come to you. If you do something evil, then unhappiness will come to you.
It reminds me of a phrase you used in your book. Again, Percy's book is entitled Path to Freedom. I highly recommend it. And you use a phrase most Americans are familiar with. What you reap, what you sow, you will reap. And the other one I liked, what goes around comes around. If I treat somebody in an evil way, it's inevitable.
Yes.
Something bad will happen to me.
Yeah. Phil, in those first two verses, in one, the Buddha says that when you do something evil, that will follow you like the wheel follows the hoof of the oxen. In the second one, he says, if you do good, that will be like your own shadow.
Yeah.
Now, there is something very characteristic about that, very unique about that, because in case of the shadow, it is just, there is no space between yourself or the object and the shadow. But if you take the other example of oxen and the wheel, there is a space, there is a gap. So that, now Buddha said that every action has two effects. One is the cosmic effect, the effect on the outside world. Other one is the psychological effect, the effect upon yourself.
Yeah.
When you do something good, you get the happiness that time itself. There is no. But you do something evil, immediately you won't feel the effect of it.
Yes.
You might enjoy doing it.
Yes.
Only later that it catches up.
Let me comment on that, because one of the chapters in the Dhammapada is entitled The Fool. And let me just read a short passage from it, because it relates to what Percy was just saying. If the traveler cannot find master or friend to go with him, let him travel on alone, rather than with a fool for company. Now, what is a fool? Well, he continues here. Again, the fool is his own enemy. The mischief he does is his own undoing. How bitterly he suffers. And I like this part in particular because it explains so well what he's saying. For a while the fool's mischief tastes sweet, sweet as honey, but in the end it turns bitter. And how bitterly he suffers. Fresh milk takes time to sour, so a fool's mischief takes time to catch up with him. Like the embers of a fire, it smolders within him. So I could rob a bank and feel really good. The cops didn't catch me.
Yes.
And now I have all this money. I can go to Spain and Holland and Puerto Rico and have a terrific time. I'm feeling really good.
Yeah.
I put one over on the cops. I put one over on society. But the Buddha is saying, fresh milk takes time to sour.
Yeah.
So a fool's mischief takes time to catch up
Catch
with
up
him.
with him, yes. Now, that's the example Buddha says about the wheel and the hoof of the oxen, because it takes time. You might not, they will in fact enjoy doing it,
Yeah.
certain things, but later it catches up.
By the same token, we can do good and be immediately punished for it.
Yes.
Sometimes we've all heard the expression, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
But the Buddha, I think, would agree with that you can be punished for being a whistleblower, corporate whistleblower, government whistleblower, police whistleblower. But nevertheless, in the end, in the long run, you will be rewarded.
Yes.
In the long run,
And
you will be happier for what you did.
That you did it, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, a British philosopher, Addison, he says, it is a strong argument for a state of retribution hereafter that in this world, virtuous persons are often unfortunate.
Yeah.
And vicious persons prosperous.
Yes.
Because for the time being, temporarily, there is the prosperity for the vicious.
So one has to have perspective.
Yes.
One has to look at the big picture.
Yes.
And not at the immediate aftermath of an action.
Yes, yes.
There is another chapter that goes right to the heart of this book we're discussing. Again, for those who just tuned in, we're talking about the Dhammapada, very famous Buddhist holy book. The chapter is entitled Mind, Mind. And I just want to read a short passage from it. The master, the Buddhist master, directs his straying thoughts. Thoughts thrash and quiver. It is good to control them, and to master them brings happiness. So much of Buddhism revolves around the mind. In fact, in your book, you wrote this sentence, which I love. If the basis of Christianity is God, the basis of Buddhism is mind.
Yes.
Let me say that again. If the basis of Christianity is God, the basis of Buddhism is mind. Please explain that.
Yeah, mind is the most important thing. Controlling the mind or disciplining the mind is what we all have to do. Now, meditation is actually the human being is a composition of mind and body or mind and matter. The body is sedentary, it is stationary often, although certain changes would take place in cellular changes, but generally it is stationary. While the mind is all the time going here and there. They call it the monkey mind because it's jumping around. I can stay here and think about various things everywhere else in the world.
It's been said, the Buddhists say that the mind is like a drunken monkey cavorting about in a cage.
Yes.
It can be so difficult for us to hold a thought.
Yes.
I'm thinking about what I'm going to do this afternoon, or some phone calls I have to make, some shopping. Again, the mind thrashes, it quivers. Continue.
Yeah, that is why now, just see in the modern world, now I think every street corner you find a gym. People go there to exercise the body. Because what happens is, the body, as I said, is sedentary. So, in order to keep it healthy, you exercise. You do the opposite of being sedentary. The mind, on the other hand, is volatile. So, for the development of the mind, for the health of the mind, what you should do is concentration to stop this volatility or moving around. And two things very important on the mind. One is concentration, and that is one pointedness of mind. And the other thing is what is called mindfulness.
Yes, talk about mindfulness. We have just a couple of minutes, but talk
Yes.
about that, please.
Yeah. Now, from getting up in the morning till lying down at night, most of our actions are automatic. I mean, we don't think that when we are doing it. But what you should do is to be mindful of every action you do.
Monitor one's own thoughts.
Yes, yes.
Observe one's thoughts.
Yeah, mindfulness. What is the mindful of? Mindfulness.
So if I'm feeling angry or I'm feeling jealous, that should register. I should say to myself, Phil, you're feeling angry. Phil, you're feeling jealous. And then come up with some kind of antidote. Or if I'm feeling good, if I'm feeling peaceful, ask myself, what has caused this peaceful feeling so I can bring it back in the future? But it's all about monitoring the mind.
Yeah, this is a very simple thing that happens in daily life. Okay, we are driving along. The amber comes, and now some people, they will push the pedal down to beat the red light.
Yeah.
Then you go to the next signal. That car is there while you're there. So
One has not made progress.
no. So when you do something, take the sense of it. Is this worthwhile? Is this what we should do?
So the real key to Buddhism, to becoming a Buddhist, is to be able to cultivate a discipline of the mind. That we have to learn to think more clearly.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yeah.
That's the essence of it. And certain books have been written about the power of the mind, and I think the Buddhists would very much agree with that concept of the power of the mind.
Of the mind, yeah.
Just one other passage I want to read here. We're running out of time, but it's a good summary passage from this chapter entitled The Mind. Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your thoughts unguarded. But once you have mastered your thoughts, no one can help you as much, not even your father or mother. So it's all about the mind. If we're going to live more fulfilling lives, we must learn to monitor our thoughts, become more disciplined in our thinking, and also to use positive thoughts as antidotes to negative thoughts.
Quite so.
We're running out of time. We're going to have to get together again. I've mentioned to you I'd like to do several programs on the Dhammapada because we've just scratched the surface today.
Yes.
Percy, I thank you very much.
Thank you,
for
Phil.
coming.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. As is my custom, I'd like to end with a quotation from Henry David Thoreau. Thoreau, in his masterpiece, Walden, claimed that we are all artists. He said the following: "To affect the quality of the day, that is the highest of arts."